Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais, and my co-host, Andrew Bobo, is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. And welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. It's a kind of a late in the evening on a Wednesday, and you know, sometimes when you have disparate schedules, you have to try to ram together between myself and Mr. Bobo and Trek, who is joining us from a secret location, not to be disclosed to the general public.
Tatooine. Not hot.
I mean,
it's not Hoth Planet. It's Tatooine.
It probably looks like Tatooine, honestly. But no, we had to bring Trek in here to settle an argument because I put up a poll on Instagram, and Trek, the internet is deadlocked over which me or Andrew is more likely to engage in some recreational welding on a Komatsu bulldozer.
Oh, it's you. 100%.
Yeah.
I had to explain Killdozer to my wife. Like she voted in the poll. She voted for Andrew, by the way, which I think we need marriage counseling now. But she voted for him, but had no earthly idea what Killdozer was, who Marvin Heemeyer was. Like the reference went straight over her head. And halfway through me explaining to her, she's just shaking her head like, "This is the man I married."
So Trek, it's been a hot minute since we've had you on. How you been?
It has been a while. You guys have been cheating out with me with all these other guests, and I just can't even. No, things are good. We're out once again in the desert of Arizona, a little bit farther north because of everything that's going on down there from years past. But yeah, we just got back from a excursion out in the desert today in some clay hills, looking for some zeolite crystals on the ATV and the dirt bike, and got back just enough time to see you guys. So things are good.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've been keeping track of your shenanigans down there, and you got the missus there, a nifty little toy to play on, and then you even got yourself something.
Yeah, it's the junior version of the Delta Force bike is what I tell myself. So I got picked up Allison. She wanted a four-wheeler ATV, and I picked up a Honda CRF 125 big wheel and had it outfitted for adult suspension. And that way, when I, needless to say, will wipe out, I can pick the bike up off myself. And I've already spray painted it OD green. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I've been tearing around the desert and exploring places that we haven't been in years past. So it's a good time.
Well, that sounds cool. Yeah, it was cracked me up when you had it. And I like I think she posted it was Instagram versus reality. And it was like you riding or something. And then I think reality was like you, like it's stalling or something. I don't remember now, but
oh yeah, she started filming for whatever it was, and I was like, this is where I'm going to fall over or whatever. And so the first thing was that I just stopped, so the kill switch was still on. And then of course I was in soft sand, and instead of trying to get it going in first gear, I was having good success in second gear, but you really got to give it gas. And so of course on video, couldn't get it started because the kill switch is on, and I stalled it starting in second gear, and just that's the way real life actually happens.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because you guys took off, and we had a good cold snap there for a few weeks, but it's actually been 40. I was in shorts today. It was 36 out, I believe, and a lot of rain. We've had a ton of rain, which you said that you guys are getting some rain here shortly.
Yeah, we're getting ready to have with the forecasting is a week of rain and possibly up to a quarter to a half inch tomorrow, which is incredible for out here. I mean, that's when you hear about monsoons and flash floods and roads disappearing and rivers being created instantaneously. That's kind of what everybody here in the park with us, we're all battening things down and getting ready for some wet weather. But yeah, it's funny when you say short weather, it's a little bit different than short weather here. But yeah, as a Michigander, I totally get that. When it gets up to above freezing, everybody's like, let's roll the windows down. Let's go to the beach.
Yeah, I had today I had shorts on and my window half down in my truck, and there you go. It wasn't too bad, but
just an FYI, if my wife ever happens to be riding in a car with either one of y'all and you try to roll the window down when it's 40, she's going to skin you and wear you like a fur coat.
Challenge accepted.
Don't play games with that angry little Sicilian, bro.
I'm not married to her.
She is warm natured.
At least you know that if you piss her off, she's not going to know what a killdozer is and build
Right.
one. So I mean, you have at least that benefit right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, she knows what a wooden spoon is, and those are lethal.
They'll throw it at you. So brought you on for two reasons, really. One reason is we got talking about less lethal because, and I'm going to throw this up. Obviously, Trek, you can't see it, but I got the less lethal 12 gauge rounds that basically sparked our conversation.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into that shortly. Less lethal, basically I mean, we can talk about kind of like the definition of less lethal and the myths. I think, we were talking about like the myths and people, their idea of, hey, this is less lethal, I'm going to carry it or I'm going to use it. If somebody just steps foot on my property, I'm going to do whatever. And there's some falsehoods to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we kick that off, I want to touch on the Brian Terry Foundation. You were recently at SHOT Show for a hot second because you are on the board for Brian Terry Foundation. And so, yeah, just kind of tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I know some people, if they don't know what it is, please get your head out of the sand, out from under a rock, and research who Brian Terry was and what happened to him and the atrocities that our federal government did that caused
continue to do
that caused his death. So if it's something that, if it's something that you really want to get ticked off about, I mean, this is a story. This is something that will make you angry at the federal government and for the ATF when they're trying to strip our rights away. But they go ahead and just willy-nilly just go across the border and do what they want. But anyway, before I go too off the edge here, give us a rundown on the Brian Terry Foundation and kind of like the deal that you're running with the Spectacle Lake and stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Brian Terry, Border Patrol agent, he served on the elite BORTAC team, which is their special operations team. You probably, if people out there paid attention with the Uvalde school shooting, it was BORTAC that actually made entrance into that situation and took care of neutralized the threat to the students and staff. But Brian Terry was on a mission outside the desert of Rio Rico, Arizona on 15 December of 2010. His team was armed with, we're going to talk less lethals. They had some less lethal weapons and, of course, their sidearms. And their job was to intercede and stop some what is known as a cartel rip crew. A rip crew is someone that comes across looking for other cartel mules and then basically conduct armed robbery and steal their money, cash, and weapons, whatever it is they're trying to illicitly bring into the country. Well, during this nighttime encounter, Brian's team basically walked into a firefight with this cartel rip crew, and Brian suffered a mortal injury from a weapon that, at the time, not many people had heard about, but it was a weapon from the infamous Operation Fast and Furious, meaning it was a weapon that the United States government, whether solely to demonize the rights protected under the Second Amendment, to stack statistics in the favor of gun confiscation or demonizing gun ownership, had allowed, to this day, we still don't know how many, but tens of thousands of weapons into the hands of Mexican drug cartels through straw purchases and all sorts of other illegal shenanigans. And so the Brian Terry Foundation was founded by his family to get answers and, of course, get justice for what happened to Brian Terry in the desert out there, because Brian Terry's house was raided by our own government afterwards. He was a federal agent killed in the line of duty. They raided his house. They took all of his electronic devices. His family still has not gotten answers about why they decided to wipe a lot of his devices and things along those lines. John Dotson, the whistleblower from the ATF that was made famous on 60 Minutes, basically lots and lots of people in our government were responsible, not just the people in the Mexican drug cartels, but many high-ranking members of our own government were responsible for this happening, and directly and indirectly responsible for Brian Terry's murder and frankly and scarily the murder of hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans, Mexican nationals, and even to the fact that weapons from Operation Fast and Furious have been seen overseas in Europe and other places. So it's a very wide, encompassing horrible situation that to this date, because the Brian Terry Foundation and foundation that's run 100% on volunteerism and donations from people that care, to this day, we have brought to justice all of the members of the Mexican cartel RIP crew that were directly responsible for Brian Terry's murder. They are now all serving very long sentences in American prisons. But one thing that we can't stop is that the people that were responsible for it on our side of the fence, they've been promoted, they've been moved, but they walk free and they're out there. I mean, Eric Holder, for God's sakes, was held in contempt of Congress. Nothing was ever done to him, and he was directly responsible for this. So, to long story short, starting back in 2014, I became involved with the Brian Terry Foundation by doing what was known as the Trex Trek. It was a 2,000-mile bike ride from Flat Rock, Michigan, where Brian Terry was born and raised, to the Brian A. Terry Border Patrol Station in Bisbee, Arizona. And that was to raise money for the Brian Terry Foundation. And during that ride, it was 25 days on the road, 60 to 120 miles a day on a bicycle, solo unsupported. We brought in about $30,000 in donations, which was awesome. And then fresh off the bike seat with my rear end still hurting, I went to SHOT Show that year, and with the help of my friends at ATI and Dark Angel Medical, we rented a suite at the Venetian, and it started inviting people. I made passes on my home printer and laminator, and it just turned into a fun party. But we tried very last minute what was called the Danger Zone auction, and people and companies in the firearms industry, which are very generous people, and all about law and order and just being responsibly armed citizens, they started kicking in all these one-off products. And we had this very impromptu auction. And that night in 2014 or 2015, as it was, we raised another $30,000. And I remember, tears in my eyes, telling all these people in this crowded hotel room after chanting USA at the top of our lungs, how awesome it was. In a matter of hours, we just raised another $30,000 to the Brian Terry Foundation. And if you guys had told me we could have done this in one night, I wouldn't have had to ride across the country on a bike to do it. But I'm very proud to say that since then, the Danger Zone auctions have brought in over $250,000 to the Brian Terry Foundation. The problem that we're finding right now, of course, with the economy and things like that, is that there's still lots of missions that the Brian Terry Foundation is all about. One of the biggest ones, of course, getting answers and justice for questions that are still not answered, and people that are still responsible have not been brought to justice. There are law enforcement officers in the Border Patrol that are being hurt, injured, and God forbid they lose their life serving their country. The Brian Terry Foundation gives money to the families of those fallen Border Patrol agents. And then, of course, we have scholarships for young people that are trying to get careers in law enforcement following Brian's legacy. So with everything going on down at the border right now, it's very easy for a story of one agent, no matter how well known at the time, to start to slide into the cracks with just the awful tragedy that is occurring on our southern border. And so I had the opportunity to go to SHOT Show. It was very impromptu. I've got a product that I brought to market. Looks like it's going to be picked up by a big company. I'm excited to share that news, hopefully publicly, in a little bit. But I also wore another hat and went there as a member of the Brian Terry Foundation Board of Directors. And so we were just trying to spread the word and get people involved. We didn't do a Danger Zone auction this year, but we did raise a little bit of money. And as part of that, and the long-winded response to your question, is that I was very proud to be able to sell Spectacle Lake Outdoor Club. It was the outdoor club and range that I had purchased. I created a private social club, sold shares, and we were able to save Spectacle Lake Outdoor Club, that is now a member-owned club in Albion, Michigan. And the board of directors have been very, very generous. They have just put up 10 shares. Basically, you become an owner, part owner of the club. You are a lifetime member. They put up 10 shares at $500 under the current share price. So that's $3,000 a share. It's a lifetime membership, where $2,000 of that goes to the Brian Terry Foundation and $1,000 goes to make improvements to the club. Unfortunately, as of right now, we've got till 7 February. We haven't sold a single one. And I really just need help getting the word out there. And hopefully there's somebody that likes to do a lot of shooting and boating and sitting around a campfire and love to be a member of a club where there's only 200 shares. And that's just something that we're trying to do to raise money to keep this foundation going, because even though the members of the board do not take a paycheck at all, not a single dime goes to them, with scholarships, with attorney's fees, with helping out Border Patrol agents and their families in need. With everything going on right now, it's very quick, and it can be very quick to empty a bank account. So if anybody out there is not interested necessarily in buying a share, they can go to honorbrianterry.com. The upper right-hand corner is a donate button. And even as I've told people, I've spent so much money on silly things, silly guns, boxes of ammo, $5 cup of coffee. If you just go and give up one $5 cup of coffee and make a $5 donation, that money gets used in a really great mission. If you got a little bit more, that's awesome. But the way I looked at it when I did my bike ride is that if I could get 5,000 people to donate $20 bill, that foundation would have been far better off than it ever would have been. And if we can have that mindset where all of us kick in a little bit, and I know things are tight, we can do a lot of good. And just like the Firearms Policy Coalition and a lot of the other organizations out there that do the fighting when we don't have the time, this is a mission that I am dedicated to, and hopefully we can carry on and keep the missions of the Brian Terry Foundation operating for many, many years. So I appreciate you guys allowing this platform to be used to help the foundation. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I just want to throw it out there to people too. It doesn't take long at all. I mean, I don't want to like try to guilt or, throw anything out on anybody, but I mean, and I donated and it took me, I mean, it's like not even 5 minutes. It actually took me, I think, maybe 2.5 because I forgot to put in the Michigan in the state. I left that blank, and then it kicked it back to me and said, "Hey, you're stupid. Fill this out." And so it actually took me an extra like 30 seconds to do that. But basically, I mean, I have it up on the screen if anybody's watching the live. But if you're not, basically, yeah, Brian Terry Foundation. Yes, Honor Brian Terry. Sorry, honorbrianterry.com. And then basically, yeah, it comes up. You have make a donation in orange, and you have donate at the very top. Basically, you go here, you fill out this form. You can do a customized donation, or you can just pick one of their pre-filled out amounts, fill out the information, and hit submit. And I mean, it's that easy. So it's a great cause. So hopefully we can drum up some money for you guys. So
I mean, it's harder to file your taxes and nowhere near satisfying.
Right. So, but yeah, no, it's great to have you on and talking about this, and it's something that needs to be reminded every once in a while to everybody on his story. And then basically, I mean, I hope anybody listening to this knows how crooked the government is, but maybe this is just something that it'll kind of help cement that idea in the brains. But
I appreciate it, and it is exhausting, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it. We always go off on some tangents. It is exhausting, especially with what's going on in the world right now in our country, to try to focus on one issue, because there are so many things that require a responsible citizen's attention. This is an organization, just like many others, they'll take the funds that are so graciously donated, and then you don't have to worry about the fact that they're going to go take care of what you needed that money to do. And so, just like the Brian Terry Foundation, the Firearms Policy Coalition, lots of great things out there that are fighting the fight every day, so you can just try not to go insane with everything else that's going on in the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So no, hopefully, I'm hoping it'd be cool if we could help out a little bit, but onto the topic here, less lethal. Where's my banner at? Phil, help me out.
I got you.
We just clicked at the same time.
Now.
So less lethal. You and I, you shot me a text with the picture of this from. It looked like it was in Recoil? It looked like Tactical. It was Tactical Life Magazine is what it was.
Tactical Life Magazine.
Yeah, and it was Kinetic by a company that it says Kinetic on it, less lethal. I mean, they're marketing this thing hard to less lethal, and that kind of sparked the conversation between you and I over text about the falsehoods of less lethal and some people might not know, or they might not understand that less lethal, if you bring it out and you use it in the wrong way, you could still get in some serious trouble.
No, absolutely. And it's been so long since we've had a good, the Aubrey trial, the Rittenhouse trial, and get to talk use of force and constitutionality of what we can and what we cannot do. But we really have never gone down the rabbit hole of less lethal. And I am it's funny we talk about this. I'm a huge proponent of less than lethal technologies. I I had graduated from the Penn State Less Than Lethal Technologies course. Been hit with OC, pepper spray over 20 times, ridden lightning, constantly trying to keep my eyes out. And that's what SHOT Show. You really see some great products coming out. You see some train wrecks. I mean, one of them I remember one year was a under barrel mounted pepper spray dispenser, and it was under barrel of an M16. So don't mind me pointing the lethal weapon at you. I'm going to hopefully hit the right button and not shoot you in the face with a live round. But there are great technologies coming out in Byrna, and we started the conversation about these kinetic 12 gauge rounds that are they look amazing. The marketing department,
they look cool. I kind of want it just because it looks like one of those old Nerf footballs.
They look like a high velocity little Nerf football, and I saw that. And the problem was my blood turned cold after very quickly doing just a little bit more research, going to their website and seeing what I believe was over 10 pages of comments of people that had purchased them and that were making comments like, now my wife can feel confident about defending the home when I am not there. And there's right things in that statement and very wrong things in that statement. And as I went through, I started to realize that stuff that I teach in our course called When a Gun Is Not an Option. I built that class because there were two statements that I read when I first got out of the service on a forum called Michigan Gun Owners, which is there's sometimes be very valuable information, but like most of the internet, there's a lot of really bad information that gets put on these online forums. And the two statements that I remember was, I don't carry pepper spray because I don't have a vagina. That was the one statement. And the other one was, I don't worry about hand-to-hand defense because if someone tries to punch me, I'm going to shoot them in the face with my J-frame. And I built that class because of those two statements of how we've all heard something very similar to those and how bad people that make statements like that, it's not that they have bad intentions. They are grossly ignorant, but they are unconscious to their own ignorance when it comes to less than lethal technologies and constitutional use of force. And so just like someone that makes a living training people in firearms and use of force, I will still never, ever, ever call as a constitutional libertarian. I will never, ever, ever support any mandates that an American has to train with firearms, because one, that would be very hypocritical for me as someone that makes a living that way. But two, it's about the rope of freedom. You got to give an American, say, hey, man, I really recommend you go get training, but you can carry that gun. But understand, if you shoot the wrong person, I'm going to be sitting on the jury and I'm going to hold you accountable for what you did. Well, the same thing applies to less lethal technologies. If you bought it because you didn't have to go through the 4473 process and you thought the marketing was really cool and you use it either incorrectly or in a way that it wasn't intended, or at a incorrect level of force, you either become a criminal or you could get seriously hurt. And I call it's tantamount to the captain of the Titanic waking up, having his coffee, seeing that iceberg, just catching it a couple seconds before it was too late, yanking the wheel to the right and going, man, that was close. You know what? Turn the boat around and let's do that again. And everyday people in this country, they put that gun on, they put that OC on, they put these 12 gauge rounds we're going to talk about on their person or in their defensive arsenal. And every day that a bad guy, the iceberg, doesn't come close to them, all is well. But one day that iceberg is going to get in their way. And instead of going right to get around it, they're going to go left and they're going to hit that thing head on. And that could be a court case, that could be incarceration, that could be huge lawsuits, or it could be them getting killed or hurt because they didn't do it right. And so, this did spark an interesting discussion over text between the two of us, because it's the industry will take your money. And I can't beat up on Byrna. We're going to get into it. I can't beat up on Byrna. I'll give you lots of different products that are out there. I don't think their marketing department is knowingly marketing it incorrectly. I don't even know if the designers of the rounds that work for them are knowingly marketing that incorrectly, because they can be used appropriately. But the way that the end user appears to be grasping them is setting themselves up for failure. And so this, I think, is a great time to, kind of get into what you can, what you can't, and being 2024, lots of cool technologies coming out there. You got to be very, very careful, because you might spend your hard-earned money on it, and it might be nothing but a force multiplier to your own incarceration. And that's what I want to avoid.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I'm reading through the comments right now on that page.
Never read the comments.
Oh man,
Never read the comments.
I went down that rabbit hole after you said something, and I found at least a good 3 or 4 just on the first couple pages that are this is going into my self defense rotation. I'm putting this in my shotgun for self defense and great self defense option, and I'm like, man. I mean, so let's get into that. Let's get into like the less lethal in a self defense situation, like when you can and cannot deploy less lethal.
Before you start that, though,
hold on.
Can I just take the briefest moment to thank, Jesus Christ, Stoner, John Browning, and all the saints of Gundam, that we now call it less lethal and not non-lethal, which is like one of the greatest misnomers in this arena I've ever heard in my life. And like Trek, you've told us before, but like anything that comes out of the barrel of a firearm, it's not lethal. It's less lethal. I just want to take a moment to like point that out. That's done by intention, but that wasn't always the way.
Oh, we're gonna go further. And I'm glad you said that because you kind of set me up for where I was heading, and that's to get into the definitions of non versus less lethal. That's very, very important to start things out. So it's very common, and it's the uneducated gun person versus the gundo, right? The person that knows, like all of us. Someone says I got to get a Glock. What kind of Glock? I want a Ruger Glock. Well, a Glock. We know Glock is a brand. It's a model. Models. But we hear somebody say I just got to get a Glock. They might be meaning I got to get a pistol. Well, you'll hear somebody say I got pepper spray. I got a non-lethal weapon. We know what they mean. They've got something that's not supposed to kill somebody, right? It's supposed to be used at what we call the intermediate level of force. And so I'm going to go on Michigan law. And then there will be some different and very similar definitions for the state that whatever listener is listening to. So the levels of force that we have is a civilian and a law enforcement officer. Very, very important. These are the same levels of force that we can encounter. The first one is no force. First one is no force. This is where we deal with what we call, from a force continuum point of view, when we're dealing with a subject, and I mean subject, not a bad guy, but an opponent, a use of force opponent, someone that you meet that you don't know. Generally, when I'm dealing with someone at the no force level, I say, good morning. They respond with, good morning. We never see each other again. They don't try to hurt me. I ask, hey, can I get by you to grab those crackers off the bottom shelf? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in your way. I apologize. That's it. That's no force. That's 99.99% of the time. And the people, thank God, that we deal with, unless you're, of course, in Baltimore, Seattle, Denver, or just any of the big cities where they're all burning down right now. The next level that we have is what we have a intermediate force. Intermediate force. Now, this is a little different because for us as civilians, is we deal with this is hands, feet, and intermediate force tools. And that's the pepper sprays. That is the the tasers and things like that. And I'll get a little bit more into it. So intermediate force for us as civilians can only be used against assaultive people that are trying to hurt us, not kill us. And that's very important. Now, intermediate force, hands, feet, and less than lethal technologies are intermediate force tools by law enforcement can be used at 3 different use of force levels and higher. And they can be used at a passive resistant person, meaning they're ignoring me. It can be used against an active resistant person, meaning they're looking me in the eyes and they're just not doing what I'm asking them to do, or an assaultive person. Now, for most law enforcement officers, they're not going to just go, unless you're that Berkeley cop that watered all the hippies, that made memes for years. And then there's more to that story, but most cops don't just walk up and hose down somebody in OC or pepper spray because they're ignoring them. Generally they'll get in their face, as in bend down next to them, go, sir, ma'am, I need you to move. Listen, if you don't move, I'm going to have to grab you and I have to move you. And then, of course, if they get assaulted, that's when things start to happen. But I won't spend too much time here. But I only say this because there's a very common misconception in the United States that cops are killing people like it's going out of style. And the reality is cops can only use force aside from dealing with that ignoring pass resistant person the big talker, the active resistant person, where we as civilians, if someone's ignoring me, I can't punch them, I can't kick them, can't pepper spray them as much as I want to because they're driving me crazy and they're in my way and they won't get out of my way. And the big talking guy at the bar that's just throwing his hands up saying, what are you going to do about it? Well, as a civilian, what am I going to do about it? I got to walk away. He's not assaultive. He's just trying to goat me into getting into mutual combat. So law enforcement officers, they can't kill somebody, use lethal force until we as civilians can use lethal force. And that's serious bodily harm and or death of themselves or innocent life, period, dot, the end. But cops do have this different ability to use hands-on intermediate force at lower levels than we can. The reason why? Because when someone is sitting on my front step and they won't leave, I have to call them to trespass this person. And if they don't listen to law enforcement, they get trespassed. If they don't leave, they get yanked off my front step, put in the back of the squad car in handcuffs. But I can't just punch the dude for being on my front step, as much as it drives me crazy. So the next level that we have, other than intermediate force, which is where we're going to talk about with these less lethal tools, is we have what's called non-deadly force. And this is a Michigan specific term. Your state will have it, and I can really make it easy for you. If you've ever seen a cop on a felony stop, their guns are drawn, they're pointing it at a human being. They are not shooting that person, but they are ready to shoot that person. Law enforcement do, and by a Michigan definition called non-deadly force, which is the lawful presentation, but not the utilization of a deadly weapon. It's called non-deadly force in the state of Michigan. It's case law. Every state's got it, because otherwise cops would be brandishing their guns. Brandishing is the wild and unlawful wielding of a firearm around other people. In Michigan, they used to try to get people that would hold somebody at gunpoint for brandishing. Well, now luckily there's a lawful delineation between, it's the lawful presentation. And here's what it means. It means that I see somebody on top of another guy, all of a sudden pull out a knife. And I know clearly, and this, we get into the intervening in other people's problems, there's some big things to watch out for. But I know the totality of circumstances. There's an innocent person getting the crap pummeled out of them, and the person that's the bad guy clearly on top of them pulls out a knife. I'm a concealed carry holder. I decide that if I don't draw my gun to shoot that person, they're going to stab that innocent person to death. As I clear Kydex and point it at them, they beat me to drop their knife as I'm adding trigger pressure. Well, now they've lost the lethal weapon, but they're in proximity to the lethal weapon. And a reasonable, prudent person, based on the reasonable person standard, what would a reasonable, prudent person have done if placed in the defendant's shoes, knowing what the person knew at the time? Well, if I put my gun away and this person was just about to stab an innocent life, a reasonable, prudent person would believe that if I put my gun away, he's going to grab the knife and stab this innocent person. But he doesn't have the knife anymore, and he's not attempting to stab this innocent person. So I can't shoot him. So I'm stuck in this very interesting, very narrow space in the use of force continuum called non-deadly force. If you as a civilian are finding yourself using non-deadly force lawfully, you need to leave wherever you are. Cops do it all the time when they do a felony stop, because what would a reasonable, prudent officer have done if low light, person was wanted, vehicle matches the description? Man, they're going to have that gun drawn because they believe, and a reasonable person would believe, that there's a lethal threat in that car. But that's why they don't draw down on you just for a traffic stop. There's no reasonable person standard or officer standard to do that just at a nighttime traffic stop. So then, of course, the last one that, guys like me make the bread and butter, if it's time to pull the trigger, it's lethal force. And that means serious bodily harm and or death. And that's why we go do a lot of force on force training to know when we can and can't do it. So it's kind of nice because it breaks it down. Once you can categorize where somebody is at, it tells you everything that you can do. And then the job is, you've got to know your tools. You have to know the tools that are available to you. So with no force, it's my mouth. Talk to somebody. How you doing? If I'm dealing with, as a civilian, someone in they're ignoring me or they're being a big talker, I just avoid them. I gain distance. And that way I can prove that if they're assaultive, they're going to close distance on me. So I just avoid those people. If they start to give me a problem, go get a manager, go call a cop, get away from them. That's all I got to do. But now we find ourselves face to face with someone that is assaulted. They're going to hurt us, or they're hurting us right now. This is where the term non-lethal and less lethal has hit the market. And there's lots of tools out there that have been marketed for good people to defend against intermediate force threats or assaultive threats. The common ones that are out there are chemical irritants, such as OC, which is pepper spray, oleoresin capsicum, CS, which is tear gas, orthochlorobenzyl nitrile, and I'm only saying that to impress the listeners, and then CN, which is mace, and I can't pronounce the chemical name. So OC, CN, CS, those are chemical irritants. They're in the state of Michigan, aside from a very small little loophole, OC is going to be your only friend because CS and CN are pretty much a no-go for the most part, and I'll save us time on that explanation. And then we have controlled energy weapons. That's tasers. They like to change it. CEW or EMD, electromuscular disruption weapons. There are two types, tasers and stun guns. If you're listening to this and you have a stun gun, in the state of Michigan, one, it's a felony to carry, don't. I won't get into legalities in the state of Michigan on tasers, but if you have a stun gun, they're crap. They only work on pain compliance. You have to be within arm's reach, but you see all the made in China advertisements out there where they're like 1 billion volts. Doesn't matter. It hurts, sounds scary. Yeah, if you had somebody right in the back of the neck, you might be able to make them do the electric boogie. But the problem is once those things are no longer touching somebody, they stop working. And then, of course, tasers. Tasers very expensive, great technology when they work. I even heard from one of the Leos at SHOT Show that they have a new model that's going to be a 10-shot taser.
Jeez.
That's cool. And it evidently shoots one little barb per shot. So you can link a circuit of like 9 bad guys with 10 rounds, which is pretty damn awesome. But they're usually $50 plus a shot. They're really cool. They have limited effective. The cartridges they fail a lot. That's why when you see Leos use them, one, there's usually more than one Leo, and they've got what's called lethal backup, meaning if this taser doesn't work, I got another guy with a gun in case the guy goes lethal. But they're really cool technologies, right? Those are the two bread and butter, meat and potatoes families. But the neat thing with technology and where this conversation is struck up is other things are starting to appear. And I'll call Berna out. And frankly, I would talk to Berna about this, and I'm not dogging them because I believe their stuff works. And that's very, very important to note. It's just the lack of understanding of what people are buying that I think is the catch. So there's a company called Berna, one of the companies out there that are starting to make what I call atypical less lethals. And so, as we mentioned, non-lethal needs to get out of it needs to go away. It is just like clip versus magazine. People in the know, it just makes their teeth grind when they hear non-lethal. Where you will hear non-lethal is NLTA, that is non-lethal training ammunition. Truth be told, it ain't non-lethal because if you shoot somebody not wearing protective gear, it could definitely hurt somebody. But I like the fact that they call it non-lethal training ammo, meaning if you're in a properly established training area and you have the sterile training area combined with the proper training weapons, these rounds, if the people that are involved are not or are wearing the proper protective gear, there will be no casualties. And this is when, if you come to MDFI force on force classes, we use called UTM or FX or Spear force on force, law enforcement. It's a big deal. And if you heard, won't go too far off a tangent, the ATF just banned all civilian use importation of NLTA training ammunition. That's a whole other topic for me to lose my mind about. But
yeah,
it's important. I think when you call non-lethal NLTA non-lethal versus lethal, real firearms ammunition. But what we've done for the intermediate force tools is the approved and appropriate term is less lethal. And as Phil pointed out, it doesn't mean non-lethal. It means that it's not supposed to kill you, but it sure as hell could kill you. It absolutely could. Generally, if it's not used as intended, but sometimes, even when used as intended, it could still cause death. And so good old American lawyers have made sure it's not non, it's less. To give the listeners out there kind of a fun bit of info, the Israelis have a very big change in definition of less lethals. A Ruger 1022 is a less lethal weapon, as in they shoot rioters in the legs with 22s.
Jeez.
Right? Now, don't try that in the United States. the Swiss that are responsible for one of my favorite less than lethal tools, the JPX projector, or the Python JPX projector. The Swiss consider less lethal to mean less lethal than rifle fire. Well, that's my handgun. So I don't like that definition either. But they have a whole different use of force continuum overseas in Europe and other countries. But for the United States, it's less lethal, meaning it is designed to be used against assaultive threats existing in the intermediate force realm, meaning someone is trying to use their hands and feet to damage you, but not cause serious bodily harm and or death. And so what you can do is use these tools. Generally, they are what we call artificial reach, meaning they extend the reach of my hands and feet. So I don't have to get into a self-defense hand-to-hand fight. I can hose somebody down 6 feet away with pepper spray. I can hit them with taser barbs 15 feet away, and I don't have to put myself in jeopardy, because if anybody has watched UFC, there are many stories of the guy that was supposed to win gets hit with one lucky punch or kick, and it's all over. So when you're within arm's reach of somebody, it doesn't matter how good you are, you run the risk of getting your clock run. So this leads us, and I apologize for spinning that up, but that's the important stuff that needs to be known before you get into these cool Nerf footballs and things that are very like it. Berna's just going to kind of take the brunt of this discussion. So the big thing about what every American needs to know that is not an active on-duty law enforcement officer is that if it is shooty, stabby, or bludgeoning, so if it shoots something with explosives, if it has a sharp edge on it, or if it is designed to have weight to be swung with the human body giving it kinetic energy, those are not less lethal tools. Period. Dot. The end. Now, the danger is freedom. That's also the benefit. And I'll give you a great example. In the state of Michigan, you can own, it was actually funny, a conversation with the MDFI alumni came up. You can own blackjacks and saps and collapsible batons and shurikens and ninja stars and all these crazy, you can have the Cold Steel catalog in your home. Can't carry them outside your house or off your property. So if you want to walk around your property with like 12 ninja stars, rock on. In Indiana, when I teach down there, you can have collapsible batons. Those are the ASP batons that you see law enforcement officers less and less carry. If you actually notice, Leos are not carrying these things much because we have, as a culture, we see law enforcement have those on their belts. And when do we see them using it? When they have a violent attacking subject they're trying to subdue, to take into custody. We see videos of the officers that are swinging these collapsible batons. Well, the problem is, okay, I can buy it. Indiana says I can carry it. When it's in the hands of a civilian, it is a lethal weapon. It can crush bone, it can crush skulls, it can kill. If you see the training program that Leos have to go through, the target for those, when they strike the body, the head, the back, and the chest are completely red. You are not allowed to strike because you can kill somebody with those kinetic weapons. They're designed to do great pain and livable damage to the arms and the legs, but it's very well known that they've broken arms, they've broken legs, and when someone accidentally, as the report was written, get their head in the way, they get a crushed skull and they die. And so a lot of law enforcement officers and departments have gone away from those because of the liability from lawsuit of not trying to do too much force, but accidentally through the use of the baton, doing too much force and actually maiming and killing people, right? So if it's shooty, stabby, or bludgeoning, saps, blackjacks, collapsible batons, those are no-go. And I'm always terrified when I hear that someone's teaching a civilian blackjack class. Well, if I can carry a blackjack or a sap, which are lead-filled or weight-filled leather sacks that you see in the movies, they're like, get him in the car, see? And they smack him upside the back of the head, and the guy goes out. He didn't go to sleep. he was knocked unconscious by this kinetic weapon that hit him in the back of the head. That's not good. Now there are cool, when we get into improvised weapons and gun-free zones, like the Mean Gene Hot Tamale, it's the coolest coin purse. That's all I'm going to say.
In air quotes.
In air quotes, it's the coolest coin purse. And when I have it on me, it is a coin purse. It's not a sap, not a blackjack. That is my coin purse. But if I was in a gun-free zone and now I'm faced, and this is where it's going to lead us to me shutting up for at least 5 minutes. Now we get into a situation where I'm faced with a lethal threat. When I am faced with a lethal threat, anything at my disposal becomes good to use. And so if I am in a gun-free zone, and I've got this walking stick that I built that has a cue ball from a pool table with a 3-inch bolt and 3,000-pound epoxy on the end of that walking stick. And man, I've had a limp all week before I went to that concert. And wouldn't you know it, the moment I got through security, I didn't have my limp anymore, but I had this cool walking stick. And all of a sudden, the guy opens fire in the crowd, and all I've got is got that walking stick. And man, wouldn't you know, that cue ball in the end makes a hell of a collapse, or a extended baton with a skull crusher on it. If I crush that dude's skull with it because he's facing me with lethal force, it's good to go. It's absolutely good to go. If I have pepper spray and a lighter and someone tries to kill me, I can light that isopropanol or ethyl alcohol in a big stream of fiery pepper juice all over them, and that's perfectly okay. The matter and means become moot. But now we have these cool technologies, and let's go to the Byrna. It is a 12 gauge little Nerf football that doesn't use anything but a primer, but it's loaded into a 12 gauge shotgun, a real firearm that's shooting, and it is now fired out towards what is being marketed as a intermediate force threat. Here is the issue, is that I am not a specially certified law enforcement officer. I am not running a bright orange shotgun that says less lethal. I am not doing crowd control or riot control as my duties require me to do. And now I have a trespasser. And I come out of my house with a double barrel shotgun loaded with these rounds. And I point said shotgun at trespasser. Now let's break this down in the elements of a crime. Trespassing is a crime, generally civil infraction or misdemeanor. But in order for it to even be that, I have to be trespassed. Be trespassed by law enforcement, meaning they tell me I'm not supposed to be there, and then I go there anyway. Well, that's when I get taken to custody. Most people, the moment they're trespassed, they leave, they never come back. But I encounter a property owner who points a shotgun at me. Now, the property owner knows he's got these little Nerf footballs. It's just going to make me yelp if he shoots it at me. I was trespassing. I didn't have harmful intent. I am a concealed carrier. I didn't see the no trespassing sign. And now someone is pointing a 12 gauge shotgun at me. A reasonable, prudent person believes that imminent threat of serious bodily harm and or death is there. That trespasser, who was by very definition breaking a crime, becomes the victim of an assailant of lethal force, draws, fires, and it is a good shoot. And the problem is the stuff is marketed. You can buy it, and people don't know. So what we have to do is we have to spread the word, and we have to understand that. Okay, so I would say to Byrna, there is only one time for the average citizen that your product fits the legal bill, and that is for the family members that we have that have ever said to us, and we all have them, I want to defend my home, but I could never take a human life. Byrna, you have created the best product because they can, especially in the state of Michigan. You're in my home, intent to do serious bodily harm is there. All I need is ability and opportunity. Intent allows me to point my double barrel shotgun. You don't need to know that I've got Byrna less lethal rounds in it. But if you decide to go lethal and give me the ability or opportunity that I need to pull the trigger on that person in my house, instead of me dropping them with slug or buckshot, they're going to yelp. And the worst part is for that person, they have to hope that the yelp changes their mind and they run out. Because if they just take that round, and we've all seen people in riots take those beanbag rounds and they just get mad. But congratulations, Byrna. According to constitutional use of force, you have created a round for the people that don't want to defend their home and kill a human being. But that's the problem. We have these tools out there that they look good. They make a great magazine ad. They will sell like wildfire, but they're setting lots of those people that Andrew talked about up for failure.
Yeah, I mean, while y'all were talking, I was looking at the website and trying to figure out like what exactly are we dealing with here? And I saw the part where it said it's only powered by the primer, no powder. I'm digging into my reloading knowledge. So you're talking about roughly the chemical propellant energy of about a half a grain of gunpowder in an average primer, which is like 22 short level of pressure for a 22 caliber bullet pushing like a 40 grain 22 caliber bullet. Upsize that to 12 gauge, and I'm assuming the projectile is made of plastic. I mean, basically, this is just shooting the world's ugliest Nerf dart at somebody. But
yeah, and I will give. So I don't want to call burnout too much. If you go to Cabela's, if you go to Bass Pro Shop, even before this product came to market, and I buy them every time I see them to use as visual aids in my classes. You can get rubber buckshot. Rubber slugs. A lot of times they're marked animal control. Yeah, it's you don't have a permit for a nuisance deer for lethal rounds. You have deer that keep getting in your vegetable garden. You want to step out back, put one of these burner rounds or all the other things you can buy at Cabela. It'll spook the deer, give them a little bruise, and they'll take off running, maybe go to somebody else's field. So they're not the first ones to do it, and I will give credit. I have seen the videos of those shooting, and they are moving. Byrna, when they first came to my knowledge as a product, I have done lots of testing on CO2 powered semi-automatic pepper ball launchers, and all of them are crap in my opinion, except for Byrna. I put one up of me firing. I bought a bright yellow one. If you're going to do a less lethal tool, I always recommend Skittle colors is what I like to call it. That scream, it screams less lethal to any responding Leos. But I bought a bright yellow. It's 8-shot semi-automatic pepper ball gun, and I was very impressed when I read the design, and even when I fired it. The problem with all the other little CO2 powered ones out there, if you ever had a BB gun when you were growing up, put the CO2 thing in. If you let that thing sit for 10 minutes, the CO2 would leak out, and then your BBs would start to drop out. Every other model made in China crap that I have seen, either the magazines will break the pepper balls, which now you're inhaling pepper powder, or they leak out all the CO2 and you get absolutely anemic velocity. The Byrna, it punctures the CO2 capsule the moment the trigger is pulled on the first shot. Very cool, and it does work. They do rock it out. They're very accurate for the distance that I saw. So I do have one. I show students that if you really need to have something, if you don't want to have a lethal weapon at home, okay. Then the problem is pepper juice or pepper powder in your home where you're trying to breathe. So they offer these kinetic rounds, and they are like a solid plastic round. Now, I've seen videos of other guys that were dumber than me that volunteered to get shot with them. I saw them put the rounds through a good sized sheet of plywood. I saw grown men screaming in pain when they got hit with them, and I'm sure they are not pleasant. But I also think back to the days of old when I used to play paintball in the winter, and I'd come home with these looking like I had been in a riot in a major city. And I remember yelping, but I didn't die. And if I was mad, chances are you would have just covered me in little bruises, and I would have been really, really mad. So the problem is, like you said, CO2, even a primer, they are going to move. But you are really hoping on pain compliance. And now the benefit to the Byrna pepper ball launcher is it is not a firearm. And now in the state of Michigan, we get into some silly firearm definitions, but in the majority of states, because it cannot fire a live round of ammunition, you can fire that at someone in intermediate force. You can point it at somebody that looks like they're about to do or imminent. And there's actually a father, there's a video out there, and I wish I had it. His Ring doorbell system, a mentally disturbed individual walks right through his front door, encounters his teenage daughter who screams, and then immediately goes running out because the father's got a bright orange Byrna and is basically challenging the guy at pepper point, saying, hey, get out of here, the safety's off. And if that dude had taken one step towards him, he could have, it was not a trespasser, it was someone that anyone would have believed would have been an imminent assault, and he could have stitched that dude up with pepper rounds or the ballistic rounds. But you would have to hope that the guy's motivation gets changed. But the moment Berna says, load this in my shotgun, I am in a either world of legal hurt or you grossly restricted when I can actually use that damn thing. And that's what I would suggest to Berna is make it not 12 gauge. If they really want to go through with it, don't make it 20 gauge. Don't make it 410. Make it some sort of gauge that doesn't exist in a live fire realm, and make a special pump action, less lethal launcher. I'm not going to say shotgun, a special rifled, less lethal launcher, and you'll sell the hell out of it. And then to me, I can say, all right, I still don't think it's the best idea because you're sure as hell not going to concealed carry the thing, but now it's not a real firearm, and now people are out of, that danger, and they can make the thing fluorescent red. That would make me even happier.
Yeah, my biggest thing with this, and then I mean honestly, my biggest thing against less lethal is, especially if you don't have a lethal backup. I mean, if you're carrying less lethal, like what is it? Not Kimber. Don't they make that little pistol that's a
little pepper ball launcher?
Yeah,
pepper blaster.
Yeah,
that's it.
So I mean, like that thing, you have that on you have that maybe on one side or in the holster that you can get with it. But then I mean, my biggest thing is the less lethal. It implies less lethal. So like what you said, Trek, is you're hoping that if you pepper spray somebody, if you hit somebody with the pepper balls, if you actually use for some reason somebody kicks in your door and you were like, well, I'm gonna use my less lethal round, and you shoot them, and then the guy behind them, and you have that, it's like, nah, I'm gonna have the power of Grayskull in my hand. And it's going to go down, because if they kick in your door, if you got somebody that's coming into your house, entering your home, they're showing some kind of intent. And I'd rather have the right option in my hand to begin with than less lethal. But that's just me.
So, yeah. So you bring up a good point. I'll speak from we have two different ways to look at it: home and out. Home and out. When I first met my beautiful better half, Allison, she lived with her sister in a duplex condo near Novi, Michigan. And when we first moved in together, she had told me about how one day in the summer, her and her sister had left the screen door open, and usually it was locked, or the screen door was closed, but the main door was open, and they usually locked the screen door. And one day they'd forgotten. They lived in this big condo community, and in walked in the middle, 3:00 in the afternoon, in walked a very intoxicated woman who thought that they were in her house and was demanding, screaming that they get out, and they could not get this woman out of the house. And she asked me, what would I do with it? Do with that situation? And I said, I would ask her once, and then she would be used as a battering ram through the screen door. I wouldn't have drawn my gun because I have to look at my side. She said it was a smaller statured woman, but I have an inebriated person that's in my house, home invader. And now the law says, well, she has the intent to do me serious bodily harm or death. Okay. My trained self, or my grown 6'2" self, says, yeah, you're giving me that legally, but I'm not drawing my gun on her. I'm just going to escort her using intermediate force because I'm absolutely allowed to protect my house in that manner. And she's going to get out. I'm going to slam the door and lock the door and call the police. But so for home, I never recommend that anybody uses less than lethal for home defense. That being said, because if someone's coming into my home, generally people that are breaking into a home know that there could be a homeowner in there. And what the hell is your plan for a homeowner? Well, if they're there, they're probably going to do me serious bodily harm and or death to do whatever they're doing. Otherwise, they would be a cat burglar, and they would never come in when I was there because they would be watching for when I'm there and when I'm not. Of course, I've got 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet worth of weapons, lethal weapons everywhere. Okay, but by our front door and by our back door is a 4-barrel JPX4 launcher, and that's for me as the critical thinking human being going, all right, I grabbed the shotgun because I heard the front door come flying open, but I encounter this very inebriated person that's now demanding to get out of my house. That person's going to get to be a test case when I put down my shotgun, and I'm going to hose them with 450 mile an hour OC and make them look like an Oompa Loompa. right? Because
Yeah.
I don't have to wait to pull the trigger. According to Michigan law, I can protect persons and property with intermediate force chemical irritants. And so now I say this, chances are I'm probably going to physically, if it's a smaller statured person, that I am not believing I'm going to get sucker punched and knocked out. But at the same time, what if they do have a knife on them? Do I want to get within arm's reach? Versus I'm going to give them a verbal challenge and I'm going to hose them down with 450 mile an hour pepper spray. I might have to clean my wall afterwards. And there's going to be a perfect outline of where they were standing from the blast. But they're going to get shut down. They're going to go into respiratory distress. And then it's going to allow me that if they have lethal intent, they're not going to be able to see me anymore. They're not going to be able to breathe. And if I change their motivation, they're going to shut the door behind them on the way out. For daily use, I always have a less lethal on me. If you see me in public, I have a less lethal. Now I won't go too far in the rabbit hole, but there are three, I call them 3 tiers of less lethals. You have personal size. Everybody knows what those are. Keychain pepper sprays, little tiny things. They're good for one use and one use only. Duty size, which is like a law enforcement size duty belt pepper spray unit. And then you have a crew serves. That's like the JPX4 that I keep. It's huge. I would not carry this thing around. It's bright yellow and it looks like a Q-37 space modulator. If I tried to carry it around, there's no way I could hide it. I always have a personal size less lethal on me. The current one I'm fielding is a palm. I like it. Very nondescript. I've done test shots on them. They have good distance for their size. The formula is wicked, just like any other formula I've ever been hit with. And they're just very nondescript. Got a cool little colored ring, so I could have a different color for Allison's and a colored ring for mine, so we don't get them mixed up. Just for if we're worried about expiration dates or use. And then in my go bag with me, the bag that all of us always have, I have a JPX projector that is the 2-shot version, about the size of a Glock 19, and I have a Raven Concealment Vanguard holster for it that was custom made a while back. And why I have that is there are places that I may have to go, as much as I try to avoid them, that are quote unquote gun-free zones. That right there in the state of Michigan is not a firearm. It is a pepper spray. Well, now I have a pepper spray gun that goes 23 feet at 400 miles an hour. That's a hell of a lot better than my little palm. Now, what I will have with me is all of a sudden, man, I've got my Mean Gene hot tamale coin purse with me. I've got this walking stick that I made. I've got this, whatever it is that I could never use against an intermediate force threat, but it sure as hell makes an improvised lethal defensive weapon if I had to. It's just not a firearm. So I always recommend carry less lethal, especially if you're dealing with an assaultive person, which the majority of Americans will have one type such encounter in their life statistically. I might be able to stop it at the assaultive level, the intermediate force level. And if they choose to go to the lethal force level, they will be diminished in capacity. And that helps me out immensely. And then, of course, we have to educate our friends and family and listeners. A lot of people believe that if you have a less lethal and you are carrying a lethal weapon, that you have to go from no force to less lethal force to lethal force. That's not true at all. If they go from 0 to 100, skip it. Don't even worry about less than lethal. You can go right to your gun. If I'm employing my less than lethal and all of a sudden I thought they were going to try to punch me and I see them go for a knife on their waistband, drop that less lethal like it's hot. Go to your gun. You do not have to stick with what you had, but I love the fact that I don't have to go from hands and feet to gun. I like I've got 6 feet of range that if someone's even charging me, and if I am paying attention to my environment, like the other night, oh my God, I stayed off the strip in Vegas. I was put up by the Breach Bank Clear crew. They were about a mile off the strip at some cool lodging. But once you walk off the strip, it gets pretty sketchy really quick. And I had my lethal blaster on me, but in my hand, safety off, was my OC. I don't have to. Society doesn't. If you see a young lady walking to her car with her pepper spray in her hand, they don't call the SWAT team. It is considered by society a defensive weapon only. So granted, it's dark, but I have my OC ready to go in case somebody goes from me saying good evening and all of a sudden they go assaultive. I am already staged and ready to go, and my lethal weapon is on my body as well. But if I were to walk down the street with my J-frame in my hand, that's a SWAT response, because that is someone looking like they're getting ready to go offensive versus defensive. And so we have to look at societal norms as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you. There are people out there that are defending their home currently with less than lethal weapons. Make good life choices. I don't recommend it. If you're one of those people, and God bless you, and you're like, I am going to defend my home, but I don't want to take a human life. My suggestion for you is an 870 Surefire Streamlight Mod Light weapon light on that thing, and load that tube with +2 extension, and as the most wicked beanbag rounds you can get, because you need to crumple that person into a mess. You really have to, because if they're motivated, and that is the downside, is that all less lethal tools do is stop an unmotivated person. They do not stop motivated people. The goal of the less lethal is to turn them from motivated to unmotivated. And that's a very, very tough pill to swallow. So, that's what our guys like Special Forces and SWAT, they go through. That's what the suck is all about. That's why there's buds and they treat these guys like crap. They kick the quit out of their bodies. If you encounter a bad guy, and I have done after action investigations of security teams that have dealt with guys that were either on drugs or had that no quit attitude, you can hit them with whatever OC less lethal you want. Yeah, they're diminished, but they are still in the fight. And so now you just have to embrace the little bit of the fact that they can't breathe as good as they used to, and they can't see as well, because now you got a dude that's in full rage mode, and thank God he can't see you all the time, because you might need to make some movement choices. Sorry, that's a lot. I'm passionate. I'm passionate.
No, it's always fun. I mean, Phil and I, every time we have you on, it's you leave us thinking more, and how can we improve our situation, and then just more thinking. You leave us thinking more, and that's a good thing. And I hope the people listening, I hope that it engages them and gets them thinking as well.
Yeah, I've had the question asked. Okay, Trek, you're you can snap your fingers like Loki, and you can make the ultimate less lethal. Taser, I love what Taser's doing. Their reliability, it's a $50 shot, and 50% of the time in my testing, it doesn't work, but their technology is great. They had a round for a specially made Mossberg shotgun. You can find them on Gunbroker. They're bright yellow and black. They only fire the Taser 12 gauge round, and it had like a capacitor in it.
Mm-hmm.
It would go up to about 100 feet. When it hit somebody, it had the oomph of like a beanbag round, but then it would basically cover their body with little monofilament electrical lines, and it would cook them for 30 seconds, like a Taser. But you could be far, far away, and it was very accurate. Well, at $100 a round, police departments just weren't having it, and so it kind of went under. But if a company can make something the size of a Glock 19 that cannot fire a live round, that is bright fluorescent yellow or orange, that has these little tiny, like a magazine of 15 rounds of air-fired darts that have a Taser capacity of 30 seconds in it, the amount of lives that would be saved. And believe me, I'm not crying for bad guys that die. Sometimes they just deserve it to get shot with a lethal weapon. But if you think about all the people that go assaultive first, that if it's not a real gun, and 30 feet away, a responsibly armed citizen using this less than lethal tool that is not a real firearm, not capable of firing a live round, can stop that assaultive threat 30 feet away, and it's gonna make them do the electric boogie on the ground for 30 seconds while they grab their family and get to the car and get away. This will happen eventually, and so I will never tell people less lethals are bad, but you've got to know, one, you should have a tool that you can afford to test fire. You got to know how it's going to work. And you just got to know the legalities of what you are incorporating into your defensive carry bubble. And just a lot of people are like, oh, shiny, buy it. And you can't just stop there. You've got to become a master of your tools, just like we train with firearms.
Well, I mean, that to me, that just echoes something that I've kind of pejoratively, half jokingly told lots of people in the gun community for years, which is, like you go buy your first Glock 19 or your first J frame and a box of ammo and go home and think it's a magic talisman against bad guys. And that's not the way any of this stuff works. It's a tool. You got to know when to use the tool, how to employ the tool, where does the tool work, where does it not work, what to do if the tool fails, because everything that's mechanical will sooner or later. I mean,
Sure.
everything we've talked about for the last hour and 10 minutes to me just kind of like it dovetails really nicely back into the idea that if a less lethal tool is going to be in your toolbox, you have to know when it is and is not appropriate to employ that tool tactically and legally. You have to have some kind of idea of how to employ it so it works properly and does what it's supposed to do, and you have to have some kind of confidence in it that it's gonna work. And I hate to, nothing gets burned. I mean, I've been looking at the product page. It's interesting technology, but like you cannot put all of your faith into how good somebody's ad department is at depicting their stuff. Like, I think you're right though, Trek. For that person out there that says I could never drop the hammer on a living, breathing human being, this might be a good idea because at least like break it down in layman's terms. What I'm getting from you is that for the average homeowner, any situation they would employ this would also be a situation they probably employ lethal force. In other words, like there's a huge overlap between this and 12 gauge buckshot, and there's this tiny little sliver you would use this and not a lethal round for an average homeowner.
Yeah, with today's technology, I would recommend whatever gun you choose for home defense. I won't get into the A gun versus B gun fight, but get a crew served OC, the bear spray. Get the big old 30-foot range giant bear spray that you can't hide anywhere.
The bad day in a can.
Put Velcro on one side of it. I think they even have little carry cases, and mount that carry case right by your front door. There's your less lethal option. That's if you don't. I mean, if the situation doesn't call for lethal force, 30 feet away, you can literally coat a human being with 10% OC. Anyone that doesn't change their motivation at that point, I would be very, very impressed. So yeah, I mean, there are combos out there, and that's, I mean, if it wasn't for the JPX4 sitting by my back door, that I would have a can of either riot style OC or bear spray, which is just it's pepper spray labeled for bears. I'd have that at the front and back door for a less than lethal option. But yeah, mounting things, firing it out of a shotgun, in my opinion, is only if you're fall into that category of the not willing to take a human life, want to defend your home. Okay, rock on. Judging by, I'd be very curious with this product. I saw some comments. I still, until proven, would go with like law enforcement contract beanbag rounds, ones that when you see the guys get hit in the riots, they kind of crumple over like someone kicked them in the junk. Those would be the rounds that I would go with. These, I'm going to buy some. I'm going to test them out because that's what I do. I spend my money so other people don't waste theirs. In a very similar bit of info, in a record number, January 22nd, my fingerprint cards got into the ATF. Today, they approved my over-under short barrel shotgun project, which very well may get spray painted bright orange with white stencils that still say very lethal on the side instead of less lethal. So, yeah, just if you load it in a real gun right now, unless you're a law enforcement officer, I would not, unless you fit in that special category. And that's just going to save you from all sorts of legal trouble, and especially geographically speaking, with everything that's going on in this country. If you live in a blue state, hell no. Don't even. Texas, they didn't even indict the Taqueria shooter. So I think it's just a free-for-all down in Texas. And we'll have to talk about that in another show.
Yeah, interesting. No, everything, yeah, like I said, you come on and you leave us wanting more information, which is a good thing. But no, let's recap though. But first off, again, if you guys for Brian Terry Foundation, go to honorbrianterry.com, click donate. It only takes a couple minutes, and yeah, if you can donate $1 or $5, whatever, it's going to it goes to a great cause. So I really appreciate anybody who does donate.
Yeah, thank you.
But Trek, for those of the people that don't know where to find you, what's some ways they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the website is Train MDFI, trainmdfi.com. If you want to reach me directly, if you got questions about the show, or if you want me to nerd out on less lethal, I mean, we can just have a phone call. Like, I'm bored, I'll call you up, we'll talk about it. It's trek@trainmdfi.com. That's my direct email. The company is info@trainmdfi.com. Our season's starting up here this month. My Team Thundercat, Tim Nelson, lead instructor, and Brandon Miedema, those guys are kicking off our indoor classes at Barracks 616 in Grand Rapids. I am getting back right about April Fool's Day, and then I start into our 2024 season. I think as of today, we're about 40% filled. It's so weird with the economy and politics. You just never know how training season is going to go, but classes are filling quite well. So if you're interested in taking a class, jump on it sooner than later. And if you enjoyed this discussion, I'm really happy to see finally, after many years of our When a Gun is Not an Option indoor seminar class, it's all about constitutional use of force, show and tell of less than lethal tools. We're starting to see those classes really fill. And that's, I think, because of the discussions that we've had on this show. So When a Gun's Not an Option, we've got them at Not Just Guns in Mason, Michigan, Mount Pleasant at Black Creek Range. We've got a Barracks 616 in Grand Rapids. Definitely jump in. We'll nerd out and talk about how to defend you and yours when a gun's not an option. But yeah, that's it. Northern Woods Training, that's northernwoodstraining.com. That is our non-live fire training. Like Freddie Asuna, we've got him coming in for an anti-tracking and camo stalking class this year. Haven't heard back from Ed Calderon yet. I'm waiting on him to confirm his dates. We got bushcraft classes and all sorts of stuff. And I'm happy to say that Spectacle Lake is no longer my baby, but it is in the hands of good people, and it has now been saved as a conservation club in the state of Michigan. So, yeah, I'm one less hat this year, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, right. No, yes. If anybody is interested in picking up any of those shares to support the Brian Terry Foundation and SLC, Trek dropped his contact information. If you cannot get a hold of him for some reason, or you don't remember, drop me a line, go to the contact form at mofpodcast.com, and I'll put you guys into contact with each other, and then get that going. But no, Trek, thanks for coming on, man. Looking forward to when you and Allison are home, since I didn't get to see you guys before you took off because work schedule and all that life crap and adulting. But looking forward to seeing you guys, and I'm in the shotgun class in Mount Pleasant, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, Black Creek is our new home range, and Jeff and his guys are definitely working on making it a hell of a training facility, and I'm looking forward to teaching there this next year.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like a really nice range.
No, absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and yeah, I got nothing else. Phil, you got anything?
No, I'll go ahead and punt this one out. If you're interested in seeing and hearing more from Trek, I just screwed that.
Use your words.
trainmdfi.com. If you would like Andrew to be the test dummy for these burner kinetic rounds, I encourage you to go on social media and bully him until he volunteers to get shot by one of these things by Trek.
Terry Foundation fundraiser.
Fundraising opportunity. And if you would like to contribute to my amateur welding operation, I accept bulldozers and I accept cash. But you could always just enjoy more of the insanity by following the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And we'll talk to you another week. Bye, everybody.
See ya.